I'm a senator from the great state of Utah. I'm the youngest member of the Senate. I just turned 40 a few weeks ago. The only bad part about being the youngest senator is you sometimes get carded when you're going in to vote. But I keep my ID with me. But more importantly, I keep with me the principles that got me elected.
That's important.
I was elected because of tens of millions of Americans, including a lot of people from my own home state, have come simultaneously to the conclusion that the federal government has become too big and too expensive. It's become too big and too expensive in part because it has neglected those principles articulated in our 224-year-old founding document that established Congress in the first place and set the ground rules for its operation. You see, our founding fathers had had their own experience with a large, distant national government, one that taxed the people too heavily and regulated them too oppressively. They understood that there is a risk associated with concentrating too much power in a national government. And so they deliberately created a national government with only limited enumerated powers, one in charge of just a few basic things, like national defense, regulating trade between the states and with foreign nations, weights and measures, granting letters of marque and reprisal, you know, that hall pass that allows you to be a pirate in the name of the United States. It did not include the power to tell us where to go to the doctor and how to pay for it. It did not include the power to regulate virtually every aspect of our existence. And if those limited powers, in fact, remain limited, few and defined, as James Madison described them, we would not be in a position where we would have accumulated almost $15 trillion in debt and being asked yet again to raise our debt limit by $2.5 trillion. But alas, we find ourselves in this position. We're spending at this rate. We understand that there are problems on either side of this tightrope walk. If we don't raise the debt limit, some problems will ensue, but the problem that often gets overlooked is that if we raise the debt limit too quickly, too hastily, too reflexively, as we've done every single time in the past, putting in place no permanent structural spending reform, we could face a credit rating problem that could be just as bad as, if not much worse than, the one that we face if we don't raise it at all. That's why I wrote the Cut, Cap, and Balance Act, which...
Good for you. Yeah.
Just a few days after I introduced that in the Senate, along with my friends Jim DeMint and Rand Paul and a few others who are here today. Thanks for being my friends, by the way. It was introduced by Jason Chaffetz in the House of Representatives, and they passed it. And then something interesting happened. This is not just the best proposal for addressing the debt limit problem. It's the only proposal. It's the only one. We're being attacked by the left for not having the right proposal. But they have yet to submit a single bill to address this issue. Ours is the only show in town. And did they let us have a vote?
No!
Did they refuse to give us a vote after allowing it to be amended, discussed, and debated?
No!
No, they didn't. Because they couldn't handle it. They couldn't handle it. They couldn't handle the fact that the American people were overwhelmingly in support of the principles underlying cut, cap, and balance. And so they tabled it without any discussion.
Boo!
The Democratic leadership in the Senate tabled it, along with their Democratic members. Then they retreated behind closed doors to try to come up with a pre-cooked deal that they could cram down our throats at the final hour.
Gimmicks.
We call that extortion in some quarters. We call it, at a minimum, very bad policy. It's time to solve the underlying problem. It's time permanently to reform the way Washington, D.C. spends money. That's why I've written an entire book about the need for a balanced budget amendment, a need to permanently change the way Washington spends money. It's called the Freedom Agenda. It will make you weep hot tears of joy. More importantly, the principles that we're talking about today, the principles of the Cut, Cap, and Balance Act, the idea of a balanced budget amendment, are the ideas that we need to cling to, that we need to keep pushing forward in order to save our country from itself, in order to save our country from a Congress that for decades has been burying our children and our grandchildren, both born and unborn, under a mountain of debt, and in the process, killing jobs. That has to stop. With your support and with the help of those who support the principles of the Tea Party movement, we can make it stop. We can, and we must, and we will. God bless America. Thank you.
Amen.